Thank you very much. I learned very early in my life that flattery will always get you far. And I think our MC is great at that. Please give him a round of applause. Thank you very much. And I'm thinking if they give you this last session for the day, see that the topic is so useless that they just want to basically get you out of the way. They get important things out of the way, or they want to leave you with something important not to forget before tomorrow. And I think the latter is the case. And so what I'm going to do is to quickly give you my context for this. I feel this moderation is a punishment because we journalists are guilty of two things. We either take something very tiny and make a lot of noise about it, so we take a little tiny bit of data and overgeneralize, or we just take a huge data set and just slap it at people without any proper reasoning. So for the collective sins of Ghanaian journalists, I've been asked to sit in this session for an hour and a half. So I will bear my punishment as we go through Lent. And I have four great people around me. Anthony Amuzu, as we've been told, is the Deputy Director of Statistical Service in charge of operations. Mr. Amuzu, for the avoidance of doubt, acknowledge your presence so we know you're the one. Great. Jenna Slotin is Deputy Director for Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, GPSDD. We all know who they are. If you don't know who they are, you don't have to be in this room. We know who you are, but please acknowledge, thank you for being here. Charles Abugui runs a very important organization in this country, which is called the Savannah Accelerated Development Authority. And a lot of our developmental challenges are bleaker the further up north you go. And this is a very important job that has been given to him to coordinate. So, Mr. Abugui, thank you for agreeing to be here. Charles Abugui. And last but not least, Andy Tatem. He works with FlowMinder. And FlowMinder, you can call them the data disaggregation people. They are global data disaggregators. Is that correct? All right, so there you have it. So what we'll do is, I know they all have presentations, but because we want to make it exciting, we're going to just put the questions out and we'll take their comments on this. So what I want to do is, what really is the problem we're trying to solve? What do we mean by data disaggregation? And how does it relate to the concept and the idea of leaving no one behind? We're going to give them general openings. We'll make this short so we can hear from you as well to make it more exciting. So maybe let me ask Jenna, if you would, what is your understanding of data disaggregation and how do you suppose it relates to the very important idea of leaving no one behind in the context of the SDGs?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here today. I'm thrilled to be on the dynamic panel in which we're going to keep it exciting, but not keep you too long before your cocktail. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it, there are people on the panel with much deeper technical expertise than I to get into some of the detail on data disaggregation, but I want to highlight a few points how this links with Leave No One Behind and many of the themes we've talked about today. One thing is I think that the theme of Leave No One Behind really sets the SDGs apart from the MDGs. I think we heard this mentioned earlier today, but I want to put a final point on it. It's about getting beyond national and regional averages. It's about making the invisible visible. It's a recognition that there are groups who not only did not experience progress during the MDG era, but they fell even further behind. And the SDGs call upon everyone to not only leave no one behind, but reach the furthest behind first, which demands a different policy response and demands different data and information for us to understand the needs and experiences of the furthest behind. So, and data disaggregation is a big piece of that, taking the information we have and disaggregating it down in different ways by different groups. But I also want to emphasize another element, which is that the call to leave no one behind and the need to disaggregate that data also creates an opportunity for us not only to know more about the most marginalized, but to hear from them. So it's not just about what's their experience, where are they, what are their needs, what are they experiencing, but to ask those questions of those people, create platforms and opportunities for everyone in society, including the most marginalized, to generate their own data, to generate data about their experiences, about their experiences with public services or not, and to have that information come into the mix with the other sources of data of what they're experiencing, so that we can define the kinds of policies and programs that will really help lift everyone out of poverty and close the inequality gap that the Vice President and the Minister of Finance spoke about so eloquently. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you very much. And if I may, maybe let me bring Dr. Abugri in, because she said something that struck me, and I feel you can weave that into your answer. Reach the furthest behind first. Don't just know them, but hear them. Not everybody here knows what SADA is about. So if you could give us a general idea of what SADA is and how that weaves into the idea of leaving no one behind, and then your take also on the importance of data disaggregation.
Okay, first, I always have to make this disclaimer so I don't seem like a fraud. I am Mr. Charles Abugri.
Okay.
But then secondly,
It says doc on it.
yeah, it's not your fault.
Okay.
Yeah. The savannah area of Ghana covers 54% of the landmass of the country. It has a little over 30% of the population. Per capita incomes are about a third of the national average. Life expectancy is severely shorter. Levels of malnutrition is significantly higher, whereas the country on average achieved the extreme poverty target of the MDGs. This does not apply to the northern half of the country. And so, as a special unit, this area has been left behind.
Okay.
When you take it out as a special unit, it actually has the per capita incomes equivalent to some of the worst, least developed countries in the world. Therefore, Ghana may be a middle-income country, but not the northern half of the country. So spatially, this area needs to catch up, and that the growth momentum in the rest of the country needs to be such that it captures the majority of people in this part of the country. So SADA is a special initiative created by law to take steps to catalyze accelerated development in an integrated way by doing three main things. Doing planning using a spatial approach for the purpose of identifying opportunities that can speed up development. Secondly, with powers and authorities to raise capital and catalyze investments. And thirdly, to work with the National Development Planning Commission and the decentralized planning system in providing coordination platforms to ensure that there is synergies in intervention in the zone and that development impacts are maximized. This is why the discussion about generally leave no one behind is an essential part of the needs of Northern Ghana.
Brilliant. Thank you for that opening. Maybe let me bring in Statistical Service, Mr. Amuzu. What is the GSS working definition of data disaggregation, and what, in your view, is its relation to the leave no one behind? And you could also tell us, as Statistical Service, to what the extent to which you go to disaggregate the data you give to us that we use as the users of your data.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As an institution that collects and disseminates data, we try as much as possible to disaggregate the data that we collect. But again, as you may be well aware, we're talking of two major sources of data. One that comes from surveys and censuses, and another set that comes from administrative sources. Now, at the survey and census level, let me take that of the survey first. For you to be able to disaggregate data to a very low level, you need a certain minimum sample size to be able to do that. So for most of our major surveys, our disaggregation goes to the national, and then the list is the district level, except for the poverty mapping that we did, where we combined the results from the Living Standards Survey and the Population and Housing Census, where we were able to provide data disaggregated to the district level. But even then, if you look at the results, for those areas which were even worse off, there could be pockets within those districts that are more vulnerable than the picture for the district. So it needs a lot of resources to be able to disaggregate data to that level. And I do not think we have those resources now. Probably we have to look for other innovative ways of collecting data in order to be able to disaggregate that data to that level. What we're doing in terms of the administrative data, currently we've started with some ministries, departments, and agencies under the Ghana Statistics Development Project, where we're trying to standardize the templates that they use to collect the data so that data can be disaggregated at least to a certain level. As was mentioned during the presentations in the morning, we're trying to also work together with the Office of the Local Government Service to have these statistics departments established within the district assemblies. Once these are established, then they will be at a much lower level and be able to collect the kind of data that will help us disaggregate to the lowest level possible. So these are some of the challenges that we have in terms of collecting and disaggregating data to that lowest level that is required by the SDGs and making sure that we leave no one behind.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So nice link between decentralization and disaggregation. It's a good exam question for students. But I like the angle you brought. Let's bring in the disaggregation people, FlowMinder. Tell us a bit about what you do and give us a working definition of disaggregation and tell us what is possible. How granular can we get when we say we want to disaggregate data?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I trained as a geographer, so I'm an advocate of disaggregation and spatial disaggregation. It used to be a pretty uncool subject. I think many of my colleagues at university thought that geography was just coloring in with beautiful coloring pencils. But now the SDGs, the Leave No One Behind agenda, geography has become a cool subject again. I'm very, very grateful for that. But I think heterogeneity is everywhere. If you see in cities, slum areas right next to rich neighborhoods, you look at malaria prevalence rates. From household to household, they can vary, from neighborhood to neighborhood, from village to village. And if we were going to do more with less and target our resources to those most in need, we're going to need the data and information to capture that. The challenge is, of course, as we just heard, if we want to try and get data at finer and finer spatial scales, not only spatial, but temporal scales, getting things more regularly, and breaking down by different population groups as well. We need to collect more and more data. But there are opportunities and potential for bringing in other data sets. Within FlowMinder Foundation and the WorldPop project that I direct, we work on data integration of newer sources to complement those traditional sources. And those can come from satellite data, they can come from geographical information system data, and they can come from working with mobile phone companies. So an example here, there are lots of studies that show that in terms of mapping poverty. More remote populations tend to be poorer. People's mobile phone habits are different, and the way they use phones, the way they top up their credit. All of these are weak relationships, but together they can be combined to understand and better disaggregate data that we have already to be able to predict levels of poverty, predict different population age structures, different gender disaggregated metrics, without needing to do extra surveys, without needing to do more regular surveys. So we are working to complement these different data sources, and a bit of an advert for the session D tomorrow on disaggregation, where I will present some of the pretty colourful, beautiful maps that we're working with other countries around the world, ministries of health, statistics departments to do that, and use some of these new data sources to complement.
Thank you. Wow. So there's a great opening from all of us. I recall the Vice President in the earlier session mentioned 3 things, and he's been mentioning these 3 things as priorities for the Ghana government. So there's a national ID system project, there's financial inclusion, and then there's the housing data, house registry thing they want to do. I want to come back to SADA and see how these things weave into what you consider priorities for not leaving anyone behind. So are these germane, or you feel we should dig a bit deeper?
They are, and they are an essential part of this. I mean, the thing that is unique about SDGs is that they are challenging us not only to find information to take stock of human conditions, but also to enable the process of improving human conditions. So it's about, growing the economy. It's about better organized urban centers. It's about making the water available more, not simply measuring whether people have access to it. That means that